Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Super excited to today have two founders that are doing some really cool and interesting stuff, James and Oz. I'll have them introduce themselves here in just a minute. But my name is Lucas Moody, and I am the SVP and CISO at a company called Alteryx, a data analytics company that's been around for about 25 years, which is about as long as I've been in cybersecurity myself. So I've been at various companies, Twitter, Rubrik, Palo Alto Networks, eBay, PayPal, Intuit, and a few others. But I've been lucky enough to be in cyber that entire time. So super excited about all things cyber and always interested in hearing about what the disruptors are doing. And that's who we have today in James and Oz. But before we get into talking to them about what they're doing, Rinki, why don't you introduce yourself? And if you don't mind, maybe open up the story on how you and I met James and Oz for the first time.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Rinki. I am the Chief Information Security Officer at Bill. I lead both security and IT. I've been there just about 3 years and have crossed paths with Lucas over the last 15 years and been in cyber for 20. Yeah, it's actually so like I think James had cold reached out to you, Lucas, and said, I'm building something, want to get feedback. And we had set up time. I think it was over a Zoom or a Google Meet or something like that. And James starts talking about how are you guys building AI at your companies and like how are you securing that? And then starts talking about very deeply what they're building. And we were like at the end of the call, I think we were asking questions throughout the call, and you could tell James getting more and more frustrated, like, who are these idiots? Like, and it's like he was feeling like he's having to dumb down this topic to a level, and we were getting frustrated. We are like, why is he talking like that? So we hang up. Then we were like, let's meet in person. And then James starts. It gets even worse. He starts whiteboarding very complex things, and I was like, James, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And we all started laughing, and I think it was a realization that like these guys understand AI and Gen AI and machine learning so deeply, but we as CISOs and security leaders like need to be educated around it. And so it was a really fun meeting. And now, obviously, James, I know you were joking around that 90% of your 90% of the time you spend is consulting with people because they're asking you and picking your brain around how to secure AI. And so I think that's our fun origin story. And James, Oz, would love to hear from you, your take on the first meet, but also if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you, Lucas and Rinki, for being very patient and asking really good questions when we first met. I have a technical background and I spend a lot of time on machine learning, so my language sometimes could be a little bit abstract, but I'm very glad that I was able to kind of explain for you guys. But just a little bit about myself. I started on machine learning way back when it was less sexy, less cool like it is right now. Back when I was at MIT 7 years ago, actually, I taught a few classes on machine learning at MIT. And ever since I finished MIT, I've been in the Bay Area working on different things. I was at Abnormal Security, responsible for their ML platform team. And before I start my own company, I work on decentralized AI, which is a little bit more complex than the current AI. With that being said, I have always wanted to start a company, and that's why I connect with my previous colleague Oz to start a company on cybersecurity. And very happy to be on the podcast with Rinki and Lucas. Happy to share, what the questions, what are things that I often heard from the CISO community, and would love to kind of spread the knowledge about Gen AI security and the risks associated with it. And over to you, Oz.
Yeah, thanks, James, and thank you, Rinki and Lucas, for your support and obviously the path we've done together. So a little bit about me. I'm actually a security engineer by training and spent some time in the Israeli military and have done some security engineering from the very get-go, and then moved to the Bay Area and worked on different startups and different larger organizations, specifically in security. Fireside is one of them, Abnormal Security, where I met James, Rico AI. Lots of my career is mostly around product and engineering in the cybersecurity field. And like James mentioned, about 9 months ago, we connected together. I've been in this amazing event that really brought forward all the Gen AI innovation that is happening in general and how it unlocks industries. And I reached out to James. I texted him, dude, this is going to be an amazing era. It's like the new internet revolution. So we were kind of brainstorming together to see how we can leverage both of our expertise on security and AI to really do something special together. And 9 months later, here we are, and shipping to our customers, progressing, and it's been a hell of a ride so far.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, before we even dive in around some of the more interesting questions that we have, just tell us a little bit about Opsin and what you guys are building, and and kind of why you chose this particular space.
Yeah, happy to share a little bit more about Opsin. So Opsin is a Gen AI security company. Our very first focus is on role-based access control for the data underneath the LMs. So basically, we ensure the right users get access to the right data. Our very first customers, for example, they are building a financial co-pilot, and what they want to do is they want the US team not be able to access Japan data. Like even within the US team, there are directors, managers, and analyst level, and each of these have different level of access to the data. So that's what we do. We focus on role-based access control for the Gen AI application. Of course, our platform also do PAI reduction and also add a security posture to ensure that the Gen AI application is secure and protected. That's what we do.
Awesome. And Oz, share with us a little bit about what intrigued you in this particular space, other than the fact that LLMs are the hot topic right now.
Yeah, so I think there is security practices around data governance, data security, and like James mentioned, who gets access to what. But we were talking to so many security practitioners and AI leaders, James and I, hundreds of them, and where we found that a lot of organizations, a lot of companies are focusing on how to protect the AI that is already in production. There's so many teams that are blocked at the moment, blocked from ever getting started in generative AI, hashing those business cases, but yet coming to the realization that in order to be successful, you need to connect your data. But the moment you connect your data is the moment you expose your organization to so much more risk when it comes to generative AI. It's exfiltration of data, leakage of data. So really, internally, when we discussed how we solve it, we saw this pattern around how do you actually securely become effective with generative AI? And this whole thing that James was mentioning around role-based access control is really that, generative AI is this new technology. When the moment you connect anything to it, it's a new stack, it's just a new partygram. So how do you bring a lot of the same policies you have in the organization and the security you have from other sources and other tools into generative AI, into this emerging technology in such a way that does not really put a lot of risk on your organization and enable you to innovate and run fast.
That's great. So let's maybe carry this into a bit more reality and get back to the topic that Rinki was alluding to earlier, which is, as you're engaging with large enterprise, it sounds like one of the things that you're running into is you're having to do a lot of education around the implications of machine learning and AI, the implications around risk of building applications that take advantage of modern AI capabilities. Give us a sense for, just to kind of paint the picture for us, give us a sense of some of the questions you're getting that you're having to go out and really help some of these CIOs, some of these engineering teams, some of these CISOs that you're helping to educate them.
Yeah, definitely, Lucas. So Gen AI is a relatively new concept, right? Especially with the rise of GPT a few years ago, but before that, it was like traditional LLMs. So a lot of new attack surface emerge. And in addition to traditional security risk around application security, but there's now Gen AI specific risk that is emerging. And one of the questions that I often got asked is, how is Gen AI different from traditional application security that already exists? And what are the things that I, as a CISO or as a CIO, should look for? Some of those questions are really, people trying to figure it out and get, an education guess about okay, my organization is moving really fast on Gen AI. They're deploying, they're experimenting. But from the CISO and CIO perspective, what is it that I can do to kind of enable the businesses, at the same time ensure that people are operating safely and securely in a way?
So James, what is different with Gen AI?
Yeah. Certainly, right? Like, so a lot of traditional security practices still apply, right? Like, you still want to have all the components that you have for your traditional application, but there's new attack vectors that emerge in the Gen AI application space, right? So one is things like model poisoning, prompt injections. The other thing is, because of how Gen AI is architected, a lot of risk is involved around like people have access to data that they do not traditionally have access to. And the reason that is because Gen AI is architected differently. For example, the most popular architectures that we're seeing right now is retrieval augmented generation, or like in the industry they call it RAG LMs. So what RAG does is usually it's, you have these foundational model from OpenAI, from Anthropic, from Mistral, but these foundational model do not have the proprietary knowledge from the organization. It doesn't have, usually it has a cutoff date of the training day. Like, let's say that OpenAI cutoff date is last year, July. Then any new information that happened between July last year until now, which is September 2024, the model would not know. So what RAG does is that it would go and fetch relevant information, the new information or the private information that associated with enterprises, and then feed that to the foundational model, give that knowledge to the foundational model to be able to be useful to the end users. So with that particular architectures, what happened is once you plug in your data sources into the foundational model through the RAG architectures, now suddenly the end users have ability to access all the data underneath the RAG LMs. And the reason for that is because the traditional security measure that you have in the sources, like you have on OneDrive, you have on SharePoint, you have on Snowflake. Now, when it get converted into vector DB, all that role-based access control, all that permissioning that exists in traditional way now got lost. So the end user now can query all the data underneath the RAG.
Lucas, I couldn't help but smile, but like, he explained that so nicely today. I don't think it was that nice when he was explaining it to us.
I think part of it was learning from the experience that they had with us that led us to the point where we're now able to frame it even more effectively. So kudos, James, for that.
Yeah. So with that being said, like, back to your question around like what was different, right? Like, so model poisoning, prompt injection, unauthorized access to data. But the first two problems, when I talk to CISO, when I talk to industry practitioners, they said that's not particularly relevant to me because my model is not even getting out. Just because, I don't even care about model poisoning, which is like a state level attack. Like, you need to have a state level of resources. Like, you need a North Korea or Iran to kind of attack these kind of model poisoning. But simple things like role-based access control and data access is actually like very easy, right? I can expose a model and then my employees can go and ask questions. For example, our very first customers building a financial co-pilot, they get access to all the financial data in the company. And their worry is that, hey, what if an employee go in and ask, hey, what my colleague's salary? In the past, like if misconfiguration happened in terms of access, people still need to know where is the file, what portion in the file contain that information. Now, all they can do is just go and ask the questions. What is James' salary? What is Lucas' salary? And it's not just that salary, right? But also about the company financial projections, about a lot of sensitive documents now suddenly get exposed. So with that being said, like with every new technology evolution that emerge, there's always new attack surface. And right now, it is for Gen AI, just like it was for the cloud 20 years ago. And we all kind of figuring out like how the best we can do to manage Gen AI so that we can get the best benefit of it. But at the same time, we might want to make it secure and making sure that people don't misuse the Gen AI potential.
James, Oz, Lucas, and I have loved watching your hustle as first-time founders. It's been a lot of fun. Just as first-time founders, like, what's one big surprise that as you guys have been going down your journey?
Wait, hold on. This question's is it? Can I answer anyway, or I have to answer within the
No.
Answer it. Make it super interesting. Yeah, answer anyway.
And then before we do that, Rinki, do you mind just in case? Could you because this one might make more sense with your question as part of it. So can you ask the question one more time? Here, I'm gonna hit another marker here.
Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. James, Oz, Lucas and I have really enjoyed watching you building Opsin and watching your hustle as first-time founders. And so I'd love to just hear what's one big surprise as you guys have been heading down this journey.
Yeah, I'll start with the biggest surprise for me, and then I'll pass over to us. But my biggest surprise is that I always heard people saying about like how painful it is as a first time founder to start things. Like you don't know a lot of things, and you have to figure out a lot of these things. What I found out is that's why that is true, but it's also very fun for me so far. Uh, I've never done sales. I have zero idea about how to ask people for money. Now I have to ask for money. My entire life, I've been doing a lot of technical work, and I really enjoy it, guys. Like honestly, like it's been so fun for me to learn all these new things. An example is the other day we have a lot of customers that doing proof of concept with us, and we at the stage where we had capacity. So I was like, maybe I can start asking people for money, even for a proof of concept. And I was like, how do I ask people for money? And I was just like, okay, let me just ask them. Then I asked them, and they said, yeah. I was like, that's it. That's how you sell. So that was really fun for me personally. The entrepreneurship journey is definitely stressful. Definitely kind of a very long hours. I work weekends all the time. It's all the time. That's the normal. But at the same time, it's so fun. I learned so much. I met very interesting people, and I learned a lot of new skill that I didn't know that I could do it. Like I could only imagine.
I love that. And actually, James, it was a surprise for us too, for Lucas and I, when like we just saw how great of a sales, like how great you were at selling. And it was like, we didn't see you playing that role like at all. And so it's been amazing to see that.
But James is going to write a book on go to market, and he's going to be like, rule number one: ask for money.
I love it. And Oz, you?
Yes, I think I'll echo two really good things I'll echo from James is like, James and I were product and engineering folks, and James had never done sales, and our day is a lot about that. And also my day is about legal aspects and finance. And like, I've never even thought that I will run balance sheets and run legal contracts and act like I'm a lawyer. But I think one of the most fundamental things, we were working really hard. Every entrepreneur, especially in the Bay Area, works extremely hard, and everybody's super driven here. But what I found really surprising for the good is the power of the community, especially in Silicon Valley, and how amazing people can be, whether if it's connection to the right folks, whether if it's advice. And it's just like unwritten culture. If I try to reach out to you for something, even if you're a high up CEO in a publicly traded company, I will get to that person because he's happy or she's happy to help. And I found this power, especially from a mentorship perspective, and helping us first-time founders to be extremely helpful. So very grateful for that, especially for you guys too. Getting your perspective from a very seasoned security leaders and people that have been around the block for a while. It is tremendously helpful for shaping the product.
Love that. Love it.
Yeah, we are equally thankful. The journey on our end has been phenomenal as well. We've learned a lot from the two of you, and we're very thankful for that. So, James, there's a million questions that come to mind as we think about building AI applications. But there's one that I think is interesting that I think folks would love to hear from you on, which is the human factor, right? So there's more. The employee human factor, right? There's employee misuse or a lack of awareness. There's various elements that might play into risk that are not going to be traditional in the way that we're thinking about AI and ML, like building AI ML applications. Can you give me your sense around that? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, as with any system, right? Human factor is probably the weakest links in all the software system, and the human factors is significant, right? Like employees might unintentionally expose data through improper use of AI tools. I think all of us are aware of the Samsung incident where they were trying to be productive and trying to use ChatGPT to help with their day-to-day work, and then they paste the code base into ChatGPT, and later on it emerged in the internet. So I think for those, right, like ongoing education policies in the company training are vital to ensure that the staff understand. So that's why I see a lot of organizations, they have a blanket block on Gen AI in general. Especially, I talk with a lot of healthcare and financial services sectors that they have a blanket ban on like Gen AI in general. Or like people go even to a level more extreme, which is that like even if you want to do Gen AI, you have to do it on-prem, like within your own environment. You cannot use any of the cloud providers. Now, of course, you could do all of that, but at the same time, it's gonna block your own innovation, block the productivity of your staff. And so, like, how do we balance between the benefits of Gen AI at the same time make sure that the risk balance is very important. So with that being said, right, like implementing guardrails to ensure that even if employee misuse occurs, the system able to prevent unauthorized action and reduce the risk of data breaches and misuse of the AI tools is going to be very critical here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And James, I'm realizing that maybe I should have asked this question before, but I'm just now realizing that, Oz, are you sitting in front of a woman's restroom? Out of all the places you could have found to sit, that's where you decided to plant yourself for this podcast, huh?
Startup life.
Founder mode, as
Yeah.
someone would say. All right, Rinki, any questions from you?
Yeah, actually, so James, like that, we were all worried that, especially like you think about late last year, early this year, everyone was like, how do I lock down consumption of Gen AI tools? But like moving to the build a little bit, like I hear a lot of organizations saying they're a little risk averse on the build side. They're kind of waiting. And but what are you finding? Like, you and Oz are talking to so many organizations out there. What are you guys finding? Like, are people like building Gen AI applications, and are they natively securing them? Like, how are they approaching this?
Yeah, I see a lot of people doing implementations with Gen AI applications. So I would say I'm about 90% of them are actually like experimenting with Gen AI. Right? They know there is benefit to it. They know that there is a lot of value to it, and they're trying to figure out like number one, like what's the best use case to do it, but number two, how to make sure that they do not appear on like CNN News or like all of these newspaper about like, hey, Samsung leaked the data, or like Air Canada like got sued because their chatbot answered incorrectly. So a lot of people kind of in experimentation mode, and when we talk to them, the number one challenges for them to move from experimentation into production is actually concern around security. That's why one of the healthcare organization that I talked to, he told us he's a CISO of a very big healthcare organization. He said that he had 3,000 employees, but only 10 people get access to the Gen AI model. And the reason for that is because all these usual concerns around like okay reputational damage, about data leakage, and all of this. So what I found is a lot of organizations, because they cannot control who get access to what data underneath the LMs, what they ended up doing is that they either gate the LMs, right? So basically, like they have 3,000, but only need 10 people to get in. So they're trying their best using a traditional security approach to protect against a new risk, which is Gen AI. Or the other way that I see people work around this is that they create multiple chatbots for multiple persona within the company. There's an engineering chatbot, there's an HR chatbot. So it's become a proliferation of chatbots. And what that means is that the cost will balloon up. And also, once you have that many chatbots around, then like managing it, govern it, seeing who misuse it become a challenge. So all this, like a lot of organization is kind of figuring out. And I do think that at this point in time, a lot of organization a little bit more mature and kind of figuring out like how do I push this to production. So that's why we've been working with a lot of companies to actually help them to push for production at this point. But if you look at the maturity curve, people are trying to move from experimentation into production right now as we speak.
You brought up another question in my mind. Like as you and Oz are engaging with folks, like, are you getting pull from the AI teams or the security teams? Like, are the security teams saying, "Oh, there's build happening and we need to go and drive security," or is it the AI teams that are like, we need to think about security because otherwise we're going to be blocked. So like, how is that happening?
Yeah, the dynamics is very interesting, Rinki, between the AI team and the security professionals. What I found out is usually the AI team would go ahead and do it, and then before they release it, it comes to security, and then that's where the security team say, "Hey guys, have you thought about this? Like, have you really considered this? Are you sure that it's going to be safe? Because I'm not very sure at all." Uh, but that's the usual dynamic that I've seen.
I'll just add to that with a specific example of a big social platform that everybody knows. And their story was very similar, right? We engaged with them later in the process, but their CEO wanted them to actually innovate and said, we have to use Gen AI. We have to start using it for productivity purposes. Let's build an enterprise search chatbot. So basically feed a lot of documents, feed a lot of information from so many multiple sources, and make sure that the organization keeps working more productively. Now, as those engineering teams, very senior engineering teams, AI teams, started working on it, the security engineering team got involved and all of a sudden realized that all of this massive information connected to generative AI in the organization is just exposed to everybody. So even the CEO's personal information, the board level notes, everything is going into that same bucket of Gen AI. And then they literally, with his words, pound on the handbrake and said, wait a minute, guys, like, do you really think that we can release this to the entire organization? And then obviously the deputy CISO and the CISO got involved and they pulled the handle on it completely until you find a solution to unblock a lot of these challenges, right? So we see it kind of repetitively. That's why James and I and all of us at Opsin, we see ourselves as unblockers versus just a pure security solution, because people are just blocked at this point, right? Like, you cannot really have this realistic deployment that everybody can just square whatever they want in the org. You have to put the security measures from day one.
And just to add to that a little bit, right? So the implication of it is very costly because a lot of time development team found out about this like last minute, and that's not very good, right? Because you want to kind of bake in all of this thinking consideration before you actually do it. Just like how you do it with traditional software development, right? Like you think about security as a forethought, not as an afterthought. So what that means is that there is this gap that we're seeing between the AI team and the security team. And I see more and more CISO are very active nowadays, right? Like even at Black Hat, I met so many people talking about Gen AI. So a lot of CISO in the community is trying to kind of educate themselves, ask a really good questions like, hey, I really want to enable my team to develop well and good. Like how I am as a CISO to enable that, and how do we move fast? And that's where we see that a lot of good energy is coming up from the CISO community to say like, hey, we need to kind of look into this. So some of the really good framework that I came across is like OWASP top 10 for LLMs, or like the NIST AI framework. Those are some of the very good basic framework that a lot of CISO are kind of like looking into nowadays.
Yeah, I love these responses, gents, because it's getting down to brass tacks into some of the how an Opsin can help, right? So the use case that you brought up earlier, I thought was really interesting. You were kind of stating that, look, what a lot of companies are forced to do is either give nobody access or create chatbot sprawl. And then the use case that Oz talked about. Help us understand how Opsin helps. Now, you talked a little bit about what you did, but let's get down to like more specific, like get to more specificity. Like how like when Opsin plugs in to support these companies through, the further development of the adoption of Gen AI, what does that look like for Opsin and the companies that you're engaging with?
So for us to engage with companies, the number one principle that we have is we do not want another place for the security team to manage, to create rules, to kind of govern, right? There's so many security tools out there if you think about it, right? Like you have to manage and kind of govern all of this. So the principle that we are operating upon is whatever permissions or control that you have at the data sources should be honored and reflected automatically by default into Gen AI. So let's say if I have some permission on Google Drive, that, hey, this user group can get access to this file, this individual can get access to this file. Then when it comes to Gen AI, I should not have to set a rule for that. And so from the Opsin perspective, that's our number one principle, which is that whatever permission or control that you have at the data sources will be honored and reflected at the Gen AI level by default. So what that means is there are a couple of things that we have to do in the background to make that happen, right? We got to be involved with the team development in a way that we have an API where the team can communicate with us. What are they, what file the end users are trying to access to. So we integrate with IAM system like Okta and TriID so that we know who the user are, what user roles and what user group that they belong to. Then from there we determine like, hey, the users get access to these files, these table, these columns specifically by default. So without having to do a lot of rule setting that the security team had to do.
So James, Oz, how do you see kind of this Gen AI in the space just evolving over time?
I've seen great momentum so far. Like every single company that I talk to, they all talk about like how they can and will apply Gen AI to either improve internal productivity or to improve, their products, software products, and so on and so forth. And it's not just the current single agents architectures that are getting a lot of momentum, but I also started seeing a lot of companies start doing agentic kind of approach where there is a supervising agents that can coordinate with all the different agents that doing different things. So one of the customer that we work with, they actually have a chatbot, a supervising agent that the end user can interact and ask it to do different tasks. And then they have different bots to do different things. Like one bot can drop an email, one bot can go and search the internet, and all of these work together to accomplish a goal. And to me, that's amazing, right? Like that's where the future is. Just like you think about how we at a human society organize ourselves, right? Like for example, in the context of a company, you have supervising agent, you have multiple people, each people focus or specialize in different things and go execute and then get the common task finished. Now imagine that for the AI world. And truly, I think that's the world that we are getting to, and that is a very exciting world, but also a very scary world. What that means is that now, if the supervising agents, become malicious and can coordinate all of these activities and then can accomplish like crazy things, like imagine how much damage it would be. It's not just a simple malware that you're talking about. It's about like a master malware that can contribute in doing all this. So with that being said, in that context, security become a lot more critical and important. Like what each of the agents are entitled to do and what the boundary of the actions. And for us right now, we are focusing on a single agent use case. We're focusing specifically on the data permission side of how who get access to what. But in that world of swarm of agents, multiple agents, where we want to be is we want to be that Gen AI security mechanisms where we can specify the boundaries of each of the agents and different actors in it, like what's the boundary of it, like what can it do and what it cannot do. And so to me, that's a very exciting world, right? Like the current adoption, current spending on Gen AI, the level of excitement will keep pushing toward that futuristic of having agentic AI world.
James, I love it. Every time I chat with you about this stuff, one, you trigger more thoughts for me to process on and ideate around. But two, you also freak me out a little bit every time I chat with you about the future. So, but in either case, we could go on for hours, but we do have limited time. So I wanted to kind of tail with something maybe a little more specific and real for our listeners. And that is, obviously you're working with companies like the companies that Rinki and I work at, right? And there's a number of other amazing companies that are doing really innovative things on the Gen AI front, on the AIML front. But for the listeners and the viewers, help us understand, like, what are the ideal customers for you? What are the ideal use cases that you and Oz and the team at Opsin plug in very naturally to. Help us understand that.
Yeah, the ideal customers that we often work with is technology company that are pushing the boundaries. Like you said, like some of the biggest companies, enterprises that we're working with are tech companies. Those companies are really at the edge of innovations. And what we found out is, because it's very early, a lot of the personas that we engage with is head of AI or the CISO, especially the security engineering function. It's a little bit more panic on the security engineering function, because when they come to us, someone try to ship something that they should not ship. Uh, so so it's always good to be engaged a lot earlier with the head of AI in the earlier cycle and have all this planned out. But the security engineering is also very good personas that often engage with companies like Opsin to help them think and plan ahead and making sure that their release are safe and secure.
Yeah, no, I love that. So if you are a technology company pushing the boundaries and building products with Gen AI, AI, ML, if you're a security team that's having to either handhold organizations or are dealing with the oh crap moment, we need to ship some software and we've got some risk in there that we need to manage. Those are the customers you're looking to work with. If that happens to be you, reach out to James or Oz, or reach out to Rinki or myself. We're happy to get you in touch. But now's a great time to really start thinking about how we manage that risk. So really appreciate the time with both of you, James, Oz, Rinki. Always good to see you. And we'll hopefully catch up again really soon to talk more shop around Gen AI and the adoption of Gen AI.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much, Lucas and Rinki, for your time. You are one of the most advanced CISOs that I ever met. So truly appreciate it. You guys are at the forefront of technology.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I think a lot of us security practitioners will, I definitely get a lot out of talking to you guys, but I'm sure a lot of folks will learn a lot through this session. So really appreciate it.
And one final note before we wrap, everybody that we've introduced James and Oz to, even if they even if they're not building AI/ML applications, they're always really thankful at what they walk away with in terms of being learning and being educated. So definitely find some time with James and Oz to talk more shop around this.